Today in class, we learned about the third religion in our comparative religion unit, and this is the introduction to Judaism, and it's a very brief history of the religion and culture of the Jewish people. I'm going to reiterate the point I made for the other religions. All of these religions can be studied for a lifetime. This is only one day, so these are the basic tenets, fundamentals that I need everybody to know about Judaism. And Judaism has essential values that are emphasized in the religion. Respect for human life, justice and equality, family, social responsibility, education, peace and harmony. And these are the values that the Jewish faith and Jewish culture are predicated upon. And, regardless of your religious persuasion, I think these are all really good and healthy things to pursue. And one thing that separated the ancient Hebrews compared to other ancient groups was this fundamental notion that life is sacred. And it wasn't particularly sacred in ancient times, at least the way we would define life being sacred. Now, for instance, there is a record of a Roman 2,000 years ago who is writing to his pregnant wife. And it's this letter right here, and it reads, "Know that I am still in Alexandria. I ask and beg of you to take good care of our baby son, and as soon as I receive payment, I will send it up to you. If you deliver a child before I return home, if it is a boy, keep it. If it is a girl, discard it." I certainly wouldn't deem that letter to be very life-affirming or valuing life. Even Aristotle, maybe the man most responsible for the way of thinking in Western civilization, wrote, "There must be a law so that no imperfect or maimed child should be brought up, and to avoid excess in population, some children must be exposed." And they're not being exposed to the theater or anything. They are exposed to the elements, as we learned about in the ancient Spartan world, where a child that wasn't deemed fit was left to be exposed and died in the deposits, as they were called. Now, there's another notion that came about through Judaism. It's the idea called ethical monotheism. And ethical means the right thing to do. Ethics, morality, and kindness. Now, mono, one, monotone, monorail, mononucleosis. Mono is one. Theism is God. So this notion, there is one God and one should behave ethically. This fundamental notion was brought about by the ancient Hebrews. And this might be one of my favorite expressions on a personal level, which I think expresses ethical monotheism very succinctly and very well. It's from the Talmud. "He who saves one life, it is as if he saves an entire universe." And that's a beautiful, beautiful notion to how we should go about living. Caring for somebody, saving somebody, there's no higher human pursuit. And I think that personifies ethical monotheism. Now, we learned about this prior, but I want to reiterate some points. Now, the ancient Hebrews gave us this notion of rule of law. Now, rule of law, on the simplest of levels, is people will come and go, the laws remain the same. And they showed this through their 10 Commandments. Now, these 10 Commandments listed here are not temporary. These are not meant to be while a certain regime is in power, you follow it, or for X amount of time. It was established for all times. The people will come and go. The laws remain the same, that rule of law. And the second part of this is that everybody has to follow the same law. So this notion of rule of law is a very, very old ancient Hebrew idea, but still with us today, obviously. And they also gave us a governmental body called the Sanhedrin. Now, the Sanhedrin, the details of it is not important for our purposes, but what I feel is important is this fundamental notion of checks and balances. Now, America to this day, we have a legislative branch that makes the law, an executive branch that enforces the law, and a judicial branch that interprets the law. So no one group is all powerful. They balance each other out. Now, the Sanhedrin had this same fundamental notion with an executive branch, and a religious branch in this case, and a judicial and legislative branch. So this fundamental concept of checks and balances we can trace back to the ancient Hebrews. Now, another thing that deviated or there was a deviation from the ancient world with the ancient Hebrews was their take on women. Case in point, I'm going to show you a couple of Greek examples of perhaps how they viewed their women. "Marriage brings a man only 2 happy days. the day he takes his bride to bed and the day he lays her into the grave. This is the Greek poet here. I certainly wouldn't want to say that to my wife. I think she'd slap me in the head. It's probably not the most respectful way to view women. This one's even more disrespectful. Yet a wife is a necessary evil, because without her a man cannot have a son to inherit his property. I certainly would never refer to my wonderful wife as a necessary evil. And I certainly wouldn't want my daughters dating guys that think this way. Now, here's a quote from the ancient Hebrews, and it reads, "And so our rabbis decree that a man should honor his wife more than himself and love her as much as he loves himself." And that's a very, very respectful notion of how you see women, which was a lot different than some of the other parts of the ancient world. Now, they also had a different take on education. They had this fundamental notion that everybody should get an education. Now, we feel that in America today, and we have public school for 13 years on the house. It's a governmental function, and everybody can have it, everybody. And again, this is a notion that we can take back to the ancient Hebrews. Now, they had a school called the Tanakh, and the Tanakh focused on these areas. And not every person at a public school likes what they're doing, and sometimes they say it's the people or whatnot, but a lot of times it's the classes that they are taking. They're simply not interested in them. They don't feel there's value in them, and they become very disgruntled or frustrated or what have you. Now, in the Tanakh, they focused on things like relationships, and I don't care who you are. You're going to have business relationships, family relationships, romantic relationships. Don't talk a lot about that in the American public school. Diet, what to eat, how to keep your environment clean, how to be charitable, health, finances. I certainly knew jack squat coming out of high school about finances, made some mistakes because of that, and legal issues. So you can make an argument that the Tanakh offered some teachings that were more applicable to everybody. Now, they also had this notion of social responsibility, and it really is as simple as love your neighbor as yourself, from the Old Testament of the Bible. And all of the world religions have some version of the golden rule, and they must have that because there's probably some truth and validity to that. And the ancient Hebrews and the Jewish people have it here in the form of the Old Testament. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, in terms of what Judaism is, and unlike Christianity yesterday, a lot of my students had no idea, really what Judaism was. Some people professed knowing nothing. But I think what it is at the core is a covenant relationship between God and the Hebrew people. If you're unfamiliar with the word covenant, it is a very profound, very holy bond that ties people together. And they feel, the Hebrew people or the Jewish people feel they have a covenant with God. And that's the root of Judaism. It's also a celebration and a sanctification of life. You have one life. Enjoy it. Celebrate it. Do well with it, but sanctify it. Live a proper, righteous life. And it's also a faith. It's a people. It's a way of life. Now, as a nation, Jews were in diaspora. They were removed from the Holy Land and had to spread throughout the world until they returned in the 1940s. And like all the world religions, there's not one unified Jewish people. There's essentially three different groupings. Orthodox Jewish people. And Orthodox Jewish people, you'll see them in Oak Park and Southfield oftentimes, and they have a very distinctive way of dress and a distinctive way of wearing their facial hair. And it's fairly easy to identify them. Oftentimes on Sabbath, they're walking if you are ever around Southfield or Oak Park. Now, conservative would be practicing Jews, but you might not necessarily know them just by look. So in a sense, you almost have to talk to an individual to see whether they consider themselves conservative or reformed, which is a third and maybe the most relaxed of the three groupings of Jewish people. And as a way of life, the 613 commandments in the Torah is the root of how Jewish people live their life. Now, Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers. And within those 5 books, there are 613 commandments. Now, Christians also follow these same books, And that's why you say Judeo-Christian, because Jewish people and Christian people share a lot of commonalities. The Old Testament being the most obvious one, and the first 5 books of the Bible being the Torah. And in terms of how Judaism sanctifies life, there are, rites of passages and celebrations. And here's a small list. There's more than this. But when a baby joins the congregation, a young girl will have a baby naming. A boy will have a bris, which is a ritual circumcision. A bar bat mitzvah at about 13 years old. You achieve full adult status, and you have a big party and a celebration. Marriage. You celebrate marriage. Death is called sitting shiva, where you will gather at the deceased person's house oftentimes, and you'll share a meal and share a story and remember the life of the person. And in terms of other holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Happy New Year, Jewish New Year. Now, Yom Kippur, and I remember this vividly. I remember one of my coworkers telling somebody, Happy Yom Kippur. I don't think she knew what Yom Kippur was. Yom Kippur is a very serious day where you fast and you atone for your sins. The last 2 days, Lent is the function in Christianity for doing that. Ramadan for Muslims. For a Jewish person, Yom Kippur is a day of atonement and fasting, and very serious. Certainly not a day where you'd say, Happy Yom Kippur. But there's plenty of other days that are celebrating, so a lot of celebrations. Hanukkah is a very commonly known one. Now, this might be the most important point I want to make as I'm ending here. Judaism came before Christianity. It's the foundation of it, but it's not a part of it. Now, the Old Testament is shared by Jewish people and Christian people, but the New Testament is only for Christian people, because Christian people feel Jesus was the Messiah, whereas Jewish people do not. Now, Jewish people feel Jesus was a good man, and they have nothing negative to say, but they break at that point whether Jesus is the Messiah. And again, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all spring from the same well of Abraham. And bear in mind, Jesus was Jewish. His 12 disciples were Jewish. And again, they say Jesus is a good and wise man, but not the Messiah. And I think these 2 words personify Judaism better than 2 words I can think of. Tikkun olam, repair this world. We don't have certainty to what's going to transpire in the world after, but we do have control of this world and improving it while we're here and living a life that our existence made this world a better place. And this notion is called Tikkun olam. And I want to end with this. Also, I want to end with actually one thing. I'm going to end with l'chaim. That means to life. So that's a nice expression to say, let's enjoy life, let's celebrate life, let's sanctify life. All right, next couple days ahead, we will move to the east with Hinduism and Buddhism and the religious belief systems of China. Thanks for watching.